introduction.
Okay.
So yes, hello and warm welcome to this Leeds Business Confucius event, Building a Network and Career as an Expat in China. My name is Emily and I have the privilege of introducing this session. I work at the BCI as the Mandarin Aspirations Project Assistant. In my internship, I tell stories about the experiences of Mandarin learners in order to educate, motivate, and inspire others. This session will concentrate on employability and China, providing inspiration and advice for others who are interested in pursuing opportunities there, and discussing the impact that strong networks, language skills, and cultural knowledge can have on your career. As a third-year student at the University of Leeds, I'm personally invested in the topics discussed today, which include career development, networking, and female empowerment. By way of briefly introducing our panel, we have Nandini Venkata, Yasmin Cilt, Helena Javitte, and Ella Kidron. They have all built successful careers in Beijing, working in a range of industries, including media, communications, startups, and innovation. As active participants in their local professional community, our panel demonstrate what effective networking can look like in the real world. Their involvement with organizations like Beijing Women's Network, Startup Grind, and Bear is a model for others to learn from, and these groups may even be your first port of call if you decide to move to Beijing yourself. As Shunan said, the event is being recorded, but as audience members, your sound and video won't be visible in the recording. I will soon pass over to Nandini for a full introduction to the panelists, and Nandini will go on to host the panel discussion. We do encourage you to participate, and you can use the chat box to respond to the panelists. And we'd also encourage you to share the proceedings and your reaction on social media. At 11 o'clock UK time, 8:30 PM China time, we'll move into the Q&A section of the event. We're very grateful to the guests participating in this panel, and without further ado, I'm sure our audience will join me in welcoming you to the virtual stage. Over to you, Nandini.
Hi. So Emily, thank you so much for the very kind introduction, and also this really fantastic opportunity and supporting the cause of giving the spotlight to female speakers. So when I was given the invitation to do this event and asked to put together a lineup, I immediately had some people in mind. I was like, okay, I need to get these ladies together. They are, for me, really dynamic women who, over the years, I've known them for many years. I've seen their careers just, go through crazy transitions, grow so much. And I love also the way that they don't really have this kind of linear journey. It's, they thought outside the box. Things have explored different loopholes, interesting ways to progress their careers. Some things that might not seem very straightforward, but I think we can all learn from their journeys. So I guess to kind of emphasize this point, I'd like to go around with our three amazing panelists and start off by asking, what did you first do when you came to China? And then what are you currently doing now? Just to kind of emphasize how much people's careers can change in this country within a short space of time. So I'll just start with myself. So I'm Nandini. Didn't introduce myself. I just went straight to blah, blah, blah. I first came here to live with a Chinese family and work at a kindergarten, which is a thing a lot of, I think a lot of young English speakers do, or young foreigners come over here to do. And it was with a non-profit student organization called ISEC. And then I basically got the China bug. I thought it was such a fascinating place to live, and I stayed on. And now I work for a media company called Session Global that focuses on like economic, business, and financial news. And I do their podcasts. So I professionally go blah, blah, blah every day. All right. So seeing as Yasmin has to leave a bit earlier today, how about we kick off with you? So please tell us about your China journey. What did you first do when you arrived here, and what are you doing now?
Thank you, Nandini. I'm glad to have such a professional on the panel. I think it was similar in my case. I just came to have fun as an exchange student. And after one semester, I realized, okay, it's actually not enough. There's still so much to learn, so much to discover. And China is really big. And I've seen like Beijing and maybe some parts of it, but I still couldn't speak much, and I was traveling, not able to communicate with anyone, was really frustrating. So I decided to come back and study my master's here. And now I'm working currently in an international incubator here in Beijing, and I'm trying to help international entrepreneurs as well as local entrepreneurs to connect to the right resources.
Okay, fascinating, Yasmin. That's quite like an amazing leap. What about you, Ella? Tell us about your own journey.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Nandini, and thank you for the University of Leeds for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. My journey started very different from where I am now. Actually, the first time I came to Beijing, it was as a swimmer. I swam in college, and part of one of the Chinese teams had come to swim with my coach. And at the time, I was really curious about learning Chinese. And I was taking a class in college. And at the time, I would just kind of speak with some of the teammates, even though I couldn't really say much, but they really appreciated my effort. And they saw, and they're like, okay, well, it would be great. Why don't you come swim for the summer? So that was the first time I came to Beijing, was to swim for the summer. And now I find myself, I'll talk more about my journey later, but now I find myself, I've done work in communications for companies looking to go abroad, as well as for companies from abroad operating in China, and then kind of shifted into tech. So now I'm in tech, but still in PR.
Cool. That is really cool. Honestly, I don't know anyone else who's come over here kind of with such a strong athletic background and then, branched off into something completely different. Really cool, Ella. Okay, and Helena.
Thank you, Nandini. Yes, very excited and very honored to be joining this panel. The first time that I came to China, it was in 2005, and I was 16, and it was holidays. And that's when I decided that I wanted to come here for work. So I first came as a student in 2011 in Shanghai, studied there for a year. And then I arrived in Beijing in 2013 for work. And the thing is that I came for a job in a small French consulting firm. But at the same time, like maybe a few months after arriving here, I also started being a volunteer in side projects in different organizations. At the time, it was the French Junior Chamber International, and it was about having positive impact projects here in Beijing. And I would say that the rest of my career moved in that direction. And my second job was building a corporate innovation program for international companies that wanted to identify Chinese startups that they wanted to invest in. And now I'm working for a French financial strategic consulting firm in the same field. And in parallel, I've continued being involved in different side projects. So I turned the French Chamber International into the French Lab. Then I became a global shaper, which is a part of a young community that belongs to the World Economic Forum. And now it's been a month that on top of continuing my project with the Shapers, even though I left the hub, I'm now the president of French Tech Beijing, which is about creating a community to connect France and the local ecosystem here. It's an initiative that was launched in 2013 by our French president. So yeah, still doing the same, actually, doing full-time job and doing things on the side.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Helena is a real force of nature. So how about it's true, it's true, especially on the dance floor. So how about we now talk about language learning? So obviously this event is hosted by the Business Confucius Institute. To what degree was learning Mandarin and having Mandarin skills part of your career journey? To what extent did this boost your career opportunities? And do you still at work currently use this language every day? So how about we could start with Helena.
I will resent for my whole life of not being able to speak Chinese. My Chinese is terrible, and it's even worse in my case because my half sister happens to be Chinese. My partner happens to be Chinese, so I will be missing it my whole life. But at work, I don't need to speak Chinese. I would usually speak English or French. But I can feel the frustration not being able to be at high level meetings where I should attend, but I need my team to be there and doing the translation. When I was working, so my second job, the job right before this one, I was managing a team of up to 9 people, of Chinese people only. And sometimes you have to manage them in Chinese. I was also participating in strategic meetings. So that's when my Chinese was the best. It clearly makes a huge difference. Even if you think that your job does not require you to speak Chinese, being able to speak Chinese will open doors for more interesting jobs and more interesting responsibilities. So I strongly recommend people to dedicate time for that.
Okay. And Yasmin, what has been your take on it? Could you share what's going on with you and language learning?
Yeah, I can only agree. I think my Chinese was my first year much better than it's now, unfortunately. During university, you were kind of forced to study and speak Chinese, so that helped a lot to improve my Chinese. Then my first job, I actually didn't need any Chinese. English was the working language. That's when it kind of declined. But now that I'm working with Chinese colleagues again, I'm happy to speak Chinese at work, and it's really necessary, as Helena said. You cannot really, even though if the working language might be English or everyone speaks English, it's just hard in daily life, especially. So I can only recommend everyone who thinks of coming to China, take the time, learn a bit, the basics. And then when you are in China, you can actually really quickly catch some Chinese and practice a lot. That's what I still sometimes don't do enough. You just very quickly change to English because you can get, you can get very well along here with English, but definitely it's worth learning because, as I said, the first time I was so frustrated not to be able to talk with local people, and that's when it actually makes you to really learn. At least you can understand where they're coming from, their background. You can really discuss with people. It just opens you, just much better. Like, as you can imagine, even when you travel in a country and you can speak a few words, it's much nicer than when you just be there and speak only English. So I can only agree with everything that Helena said.
Yeah, I really agree with your points. I think I have quite similar, my situation is quite similar to the both of you. So it's like every day at work, I actually don't need to use Chinese. But still, it's frustrating. And maybe I have colleagues who are, they all speak amazing English and they're Chinese. So I feel like if I move the conversation to Chinese, then they're like, it would be kind of awkward. So you have to maybe find those people who are really happy to chat with you and they don't mind. And actually, usually I think most people are very supportive. Ella, what has been your experience? I understand you've got a pretty high level of Chinese.
So I think I'll start by explaining that the reason I started studying Chinese is purely out of curiosity, because I thought it was fun and I thought it was interesting. And I started at a company where I really didn't need it. So similar to, like, I think a lot of people who come as an expat come with kind of a more familiar expat circle. But what I found is that I kind of ended up taking a very unconventional path where the more I learned Chinese, the more I wanted to be in the community. And that led me to live kind of in the depths of Beijing. If anyone knows, Beijing is like 7 rings, and I live out in the 5th ring. So it's been a very unconventional, I think, journey. And it's one of those things where I think it was trial by fire that really drove me to continue to study and pursue the language. I remember going to one of the companies that I worked at before and sitting in a meeting and be like, I did not understand a thing. And kind of almost feeling like a child again and having to learn how to operate in that fully immersive environment. I think at first it was quite frustrating, but it became pretty motivating. And I think at the end of the day, language is a tool, and it's a tool for communication. And as a communicator, it's something that's just been helpful in me, just getting to know people that I'm around a bit better and in a bit deeper. And that's been the motivator, not necessarily a certain level or to pass a test, but really just to connect more with people.
Yeah. So I guess maybe the takeaway from what we're hearing from our shared experiences is that it is possible to have a career in China without necessarily learning the language. I mean, there are people I know who speak almost like zero Chinese. It is possible, but then I think, you know, the quality of life, your ability to really explore this country and, you know, make the most of all the opportunities, not just professional, but personal, and, you know, live in China, you should understand what's going on around you. All those doors, as Helena said, open up so much more if you do put in the effort to study. Now, of course, another big aspect of today's webinar is the topic of networking. So I'm really curious, I think, well, I mean, I'm not so curious. I know all of you are master networkers, or at least in my opinion, and I'd love to hear about how networking has also boosted your careers. Like, for example, were there any random chance encounters, random things that happened that suddenly a professional door opened for you? How about we start with Yasmin?
Thank you for saying that. I actually never really liked networking in university, even though everyone was like, okay, you have to network, you have to meet people. So I was never a really big fan, but in China, I think it opened me all the doors. Like I got my first job through meeting people at a networking event, at a startup grind event, by becoming a volunteer. I think that's part of networking, being there, getting involved with the team, and then just, you know, as a volunteer, doing a good job, being able to meet other people, and then they open doors for you. They see, okay, there's someone who wants to learn, who's eager to contribute to the community. And it definitely got my first job. It also got me my second job. So thanks to networking and meeting really inspiring people, I am able to do really great work here. And yeah, it's definitely super important. That's what I think learned in China. They often say, okay, you know, applying for a job, having interviews is one way, or you really go the other way where you just, it was probably also luck, to be honest. I think I was at the same time, at the right time, at the right time at the same. Well, how do you say it? You know what I mean?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, it's late here in China. Sorry, my brain is already off. But yeah, I had luck, and I really got great opportunities through networking and through the communities that I'm part of. So I definitely would recommend anyone who is interested in working in China or even in studying to really attend those events that sometimes feel like an obligation, or just like, okay, not another networking event, but it can help you to start your career somewhere, or even, you know, to get that job that you actually never really thought that you would be doing or even dreaming of.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because sometimes we can judge ourselves very harshly, but when we are exposed to other people, and especially if they see us like volunteering and they learn about our work ethic, and they learn that we're, you know, reliable, we have good communication skills, they can actually see it being demonstrated, then they will be like, okay, this person, you know, they really have those necessary skills and qualities. They're someone I'd like to hire. So I think it goes to show that networking doesn't necessarily have to be, going to an event, shaking people's hands, being like, hey, I'm important, let's talk business, which can be very off-putting to a lot of people. Helena, what about you? So, I mean, you do so many events and projects on the side. So for me, you're like networking empress or something.
But you see, it's very interesting that you say that, because I agree with everything that Yasmin said, including the part I hate networking, but like I hate it. It really makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm very shy. I'm sweating. I've had times where I had to go somewhere and I was hiding in the bathroom. So I'm seriously not comfortable networking. And the reason why I've been organizing so many events is because then I don't have to network. People come to me. I'm here, I'm organizing, and then I don't need to, approach people and be like, hey, do you want to be my friend? And so for those people who might not really be comfortable in networking, because I've seen some people who are comfortable, and it's great, I'm not part of them. I would recommend to change the word and replace networking by making friends. You're here to make friends. And when you are in that mindset, you're not asking those very cold questions, as in like, what do you do in life, and what do you think about what has been discussed there. You're really trying to get to know the person, because this is someone that you might be happy to have in your life, whether it's a friend or just a business connection. So if you are in that mindset and you're approaching any sort of networking situation the same way that you would approach a birthday party of the best friend, it really changes your mindset, and it allows you to ask a very different types of questions. But the power of networking are also similar to Yasmin. I had my 3 jobs here in China, so not through networking, but through making friends and making sure that you're visible. And I think also for people who are a little bit afraid of networking, that might help. Being involved in any sort of organization where you are already showing the type of person that you are makes it so easy, because you don't have to knock at the doors. The doors are already open and people are generally interested in the person that you are. So then bypass the networking and go straight into building closer and more meaningful connections.
That is all so interesting. I had no idea you hated networking, because I thought you were just like someone like born to do it. This is the first time I've actually heard this. I think that's a really clever way. And I think it goes to show that, we just have to reframe the way we think of this activity. Actually, I remember some years ago, I was job hunting and I was having dinner with Helena, and she was advising me to go to events, like networking events, or just like put myself out there, meet people, say hello, and not expect anything, because I think this is something that is also pretty icky about networking. It can feel like you're just meeting people because they might have something that is useful to you. And this really makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to be like, hi, help me find a job, and someone be like, help me, I don't know, do something else. This feels really uncomfortable. I'm not one of those people who wants to ask for help unless it's a friend, someone I know. So I think that's a really cool point. And Ella, what about yourself? How has networking helped you, or do you think about it in a completely different way as Helena does?
I could not agree more with both of these ladies. The minute I heard networking, I already felt kind of like a bit of a cringe, because there's something about the word that just feels very transactional. And I think that when we, just as Helen said, when we approach anyone with the expectation that we're going to get something in return, it just doesn't feel genuine anymore. And so for me, the biggest thing, and what I love about being here in China that's amazing, is that everyone just has really fascinating stories how they got here. Usually people are like, oh, I plan to be here 6 months, but it's been 6 years and I've done this and I've done that, and just these amazing journeys. And I find that instead of thinking, going to events and saying, oh, I'm going to go network, or, oh, I want to meet as many people, it's just listening to people tell their stories can be really amazing. And then another thing that I found really helpful is instead of worrying about how many people have I met that are going to help me, it's more thinking about the people I know who can help others. So I call it A to C. And what I mean is, if I'm person A, I know person B and person C, then I'm going to connect B and C together, basically. Just making sure that if there's people you enjoy being around that you think other people enjoy being around, kind of just broadening the circle that way. And then it feels much more natural. But I think that any sort of personal engagement that has an agenda behind it is always going to feel a little bit impersonal, and just figuring out how within the environments that we have to be in. Of course, I have to go out and meet people. It's part of my job, but how do I go out and meet people and have that be a genuine connection, I think is what makes it less intimidating. Because I'm definitely also the kind who would hide in the bathroom if you're asking me to exchange 50 business cards at an event.
Yeah. Okay.
Nandini, I'd like to build up on what Ella said. Do you mind?
Sure, go for it.
On the connecting aspect. When you're networking, and we all agree that we don't like that, you're basically trying to being connected to person B. When, like Ella is saying, you're acting as a connector. If you don't have to actually even know B and C, let's say you just met them or you heard about them, but you know that they have something that could be useful for both of them, and you're connecting them. As a matter of fact, I just did that yesterday. Like, I was mentioning French Tech, someone added me on WeChat, and then she was like, hey, can you connect me to startups in healthcare? So I don't know her. And then I was asking around, it's like, who can I connect her to? I asked my colleague who had a friend, and I've connected them both. Now, those two people who I originally didn't know, now what they remember is that they have made a new connection. They didn't have to go through the pain of networking, but they see me as a as a connector. So that means that I now have built my network just by being in the mindset of connecting and helping out. So I think that this mindset also could be much more relaxing for people who are not so comfortable in networking, and really building up on what Ella said. The power of connection is very, very strong.
And this is like a great way to, I mean, I think like it might sound a bit weird and icky, but it's a great way to also grow your professional network, or maybe just get a better reputation, because you're not someone with your own agenda. You're actually just like very helpful, and it shows that like you know a lot of people, you know what people need, you're trying to help people. So it's like, for example, meeting someone. A few weeks ago I met a lady, and she told me that she's leaving her job. She really enjoys her job. I have another friend who's job hunting, and I just put them in touch. So it can be something small like that. But speaking about, so I mean, we've spoken about like people just going out to these events and meeting people just like, you know, with a very one purpose in mind, and, you know, seeing it as a very transactional thing. But I wonder if there are any other kind of networking faux pas that we could speak about that could like come across in the wrong way. So if I speak about my personal experience, we, of course, in China, we all use WeChat, the app, for almost everything. And I get, because I'm one of the organizers of Beijing Women's Network. So it's this big women's network. And sometimes I get people just randomly adding me, and I don't know why they're adding me. I don't know if, you know, it's like a scam, or it's just like someone just wants to connect but never will say anything. So now I've kind of put a line like, if you want to add me, please tell me why, because I don't want to connect with people who we're never going to talk to. Yeah, so that this kind of thing like puts me off. I wonder about yourselves. Yasmin, do you have any thoughts on this networking faux pas?
I think in the beginning, I made the mistake of just often accepting new contacts without actually making any notes or writing down where I met them, or often people also don't have like a profile picture in China, and it's like it's hard to actually, if you don't make any notes, to know who that is, or when you meet them again and they say, oh, we connected already and we texted, and I'm like, oops, okay, sorry, I don't remember. I think that's like probably from my side something that the mistake that I did often. Now I make sure, okay, I write down who I met, and I also send a message if they don't send a message. But what, as you mentioned, often happens is you get added a lot, especially hosting events. People add you, ask questions, and often, as you mentioned, you don't really know who that person is, so you often also get some weird conversations or random questions that happens, unfortunately. But I think I never had like a really big issue apart from not knowing who I'm talking to, even though I met them once. I think that's like one of the disadvantages of adding people so quickly. Like back home, you wouldn't do that with WhatsApp. It's different in China. So yeah, definitely good when you come to China and you start adding people or exchanging or WeChat contacts, just to make a remark or note of who you're actually adding.
Okay, because I think it's very embarrassing, of course, if you bump into one of these people later and they're like, hey, Yasmin, and you're like, yeah, how did we meet again? They might be a bit offended by that. So that's a good tip. Let's see, what about Ella? Do you have any thoughts about what you think you should definitely not do when it comes to this topic of networking?
Yeah, so I totally relate to what Yasmin said. And then one thing I wanted to say is that, and this might sound counter to what I just said, but I don't think it is. It's that when there's people are making connection, I want it to be genuine. And it's okay to genuinely want something from me, but just say it directly. So I would much prefer someone reach out to me, add me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I added you because I want to know about X, or hey, I need help with Y. Instead of, hey, how's it going? How are you? Haven't seen you in a while. And then like 5 messages later, there's a message about what they actually want. So I think that for me, I love when people are building a genuine connection. I'm also happy to help when it's not a genuine connection. But I think that just the directness, and this might be because I come from New York, but the directness of just saying, hey, I really need help with this, or hey, it'd be great if you could do this. I feel it helps me be more open.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, there's nothing kind of more uncomfortable than when someone is asking for something, but they're kind of beating around the bush and you're like, what am I getting myself into? Helena, do you have any thoughts on this? Maybe Helena is temporarily off.
Yeah.
Okay, she'll get back to us. Or maybe she's gone on another networking spree. My great joke there. So I think on the point that Ella mentioned, I sometimes get people asking me to meet for coffee and not explaining why. And then I find this I think when you start, working after a few years, you have really limited free time. So time is kind of your most precious resource. So you have to decide, like, if someone wants to meet, who are you going to give that 1 hour, 2 hours of your weekend to? Because you can't meet everyone. So I really think if you're reaching out to people, you should, as Ella said, just be genuine and just say what you want, and then they can decide if they want to meet you. And if maybe someone is being kind of vague in their replies, saying like, oh, I'm really busy, or like, I'll get back to you, then just respect that and move on, because I guess you don't want to get this reputation as a very needy kind of person. So with the panel that we have here, I think another topic that I'd like to discuss is what it's like to work in industries that are male dominated, because Yasmin works in the startup scene. Ella, you're in tech. Helena, hopefully if she gets back to us, She is, working also with a lot of projects to do with tech and innovation. So, I think we should also talk about that, this elephant in the room. I'm just curious if you have felt that you maybe have been treated differently because of your gender. Maybe it's nothing really overt. It could be some kind of implicit bias, and just how you've tried to deal with such challenges if you've experienced them at all. How about we start with Ella?
Sure. I think this is a great question. I'm really glad that you addressed it. When I look at tech, it's an interesting industry because if we look at what the tech industry is trying to do in terms of bring more women into STEM and kind of like big picture, kind of equalize or kind of make the industry more diverse, there's definitely a lot being done. That said, I think it takes time for those big efforts to trickle down to the day-to-day. And so what I found being in a tech industry is that sometimes it's a room of all men. Other times it's a room where maybe the men in the room are used to being the dominant voice, and that it's harder to, maybe I don't feel like I'm being fully listened to. And I think it's a process, because if we look at what the industry is trying to do, there's definitely progress being made in the big sense of things, kind of trying to put more women on panels and trying to get more women interested in tech industries earlier, which is all great. But I think, like I said, when it comes down to kind of the day-to-day, one of the things I notice is that sometimes I've noticed in previous jobs is that I feel like I'm on a treadmill where the minute I pause, someone might finish my sentence for me. And I think that it's something that it's probably because this is an industry that is not that used to having a lot of women in the room. And a lot of the guys I talk to, and sometimes I confront them, I say, I haven't finished. They're like, oh, I'm trying to help you. I was like, I've got my point, but I want to breathe. I know how to speak. I have my point. And owning the space, the silence, I think is one of the biggest challenges in industries where the male voice might be more dominant. It's encouraging to see it changing, but it's something that it also, I talk to other, girlfriends who are in tech too, and it's kind of having to be comfortable with saying that this is my space, this is my time to talk, even if there are not words coming out of my mouth right this second. I have kind of taken these 2 minutes and I'm going to, at my own pace, kind of be able to express what I want to say. And I think that as these industries continue to do all these big picture things that they're doing, it will trickle down, but it's going to take time. And as women in tech, one of the best things we can do is just try and own that space and to be upfront with the guys in the room and to use them as our allies as much as possible and kind of let them know where we are and how certain things that they might not even be that conscious of make us feel.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's very interesting that you talk about people maybe just not being conscious of small actions. Even before I was doing my master's in Vienna, and I had a German class at this school, and the teacher, he was very proud. He had written his own textbook that we were going to learn from, and it was all about like stories at companies and businesses and going on business trips. And after some months, I realized that in the entire book, there was no story about a woman like working. They were all like, Mr. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so. So of course I put my hand up and I was like, in the world that you live in, do you just not see women in business? And just like you, I wanted to call it out. And he was kind of like, oh, well, you guys need to do something. I think he felt very like attacked by it. But I think if you see something wrong, it can be powerful and it can give you confidence if you call it out. Yasmin, I wonder if I could ask you about your experiences working in startups. Do you feel like in this scene that you also have been treated differently because of your gender?
I'm lucky that I've actually never really felt treated differently, maybe because my profession is a bit different. I'm really involved with event management, with community work, where I'm surrounded by a lot of women. But what Ella said, I can only agree. When it comes to the events we are hosting, or even like trying to reach out to speakers, to startups, sourcing startups, you don't have many women actually, which is sad, because we're trying to include women on the panels. We try to host events where we represent not only successful male entrepreneurs in Beijing, but trying to also bring the ladies on the stage, which is often really a challenge. Either the successful female entrepreneurs don't like to, showcase their success, or they don't like to often talk about what they actually have achieved. So from my point of view, perspective, it's often a big challenge to really create this diverse community where you're showcasing not only one part of the community, but you showcase the success and what women are achieving. So that's something that we've been struggling. And as Ella mentioned, luckily there's a change, and also a lot of other communities in Beijing doing a lot of great work to change that, and I'm happy to see that we are able to reach out to more and more female entrepreneurs, but often it's still a challenge. And I think, as I said, I'm happy with my team. I always worked in quite mixed teams, so it was for me personally never an issue, but that's also very related to my profession in event management and in community management, that often women are more dominant. But when it comes to startups, when it comes to hosting events, it's definitely still a lot that needs to change in order to have more female successful, also female entrepreneurs that have maybe not succeeded, to have them on the stage and actually share and showcase what they achieved, or why they failed. I think that's very important, and I hope that that it will change and we'll be able to have more female entrepreneurs on the stage.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Yasmin. So Helena, welcome back. So we were talking about what it's like to work in male-dominated industries. So, the realities of what it can be like. And we were talking a lot about also implicit bias. So maybe unconscious things people are doing, maybe to make you feel like, you're not so worthy of that particular opportunity, or maybe, as Ella was saying, that, people even interrupting you as if, they just want to hear themselves talk instead of listening to a lady talk. Tell us about your experiences.
My experience, fortunately, I didn't have that. I'm in a male industry, but the majority for me has always been women. My team has always been women. My bosses have always been men, though, so that's a good point. And I do agree that we can complain about the system, the fact that representation is not good enough. But the thing is that this is a little bit outside of our control here right now in this discussion. And I like focusing on what I personally can do and what maybe people in this conversation can also do. And I've been mentoring my team big time. The job before. And I remember it was this very vivid experience where I had this team member and we were really not getting along well, a woman. And there was this project, and I arrived a little bit late at a meeting, and I realized where she was sitting, and she was not sitting at a place that I thought was her spot. I thought that she should have been sitting where she could be taken more respectfully. Like she was putting herself in the role of his assistant, where she was in fact a project manager. And so we had a conversation afterwards, and I was telling her, you need to be very mindful how you stand, how you speak, and your attitude in a meeting. You need to speak up. Because if you're not taking that initiative, having a seat at the table, it is possible that you might not have someone, in that case, me, that is going to give you the spotlight. So you need to take it. And I think that is very, very important. As event organizers, I think being mindful, indeed, to Yasmin's point, making sure that we have good diversity in terms of genders, but also in terms of background and you know, diversity in the broader sense. That I think we can be mindful of that. But I think more importantly, it's fascinating to me to see that despite all the work that we've been doing from female empowerment, the discourse is always the same. It's about building women's self-confidence. And, you know, like right now, I'm working on my LinkedIn because I realized that I'm not saying what I'm doing. And I'm like, if I'm not putting publicly all the things that I'm doing, who is going to do it for me? And it's terrible because I can be very self-confident in certain types of situation. But the thing is that I'm not going to have the visibility that I deserve. And I see my male counterpart in my team who are not president of French Tech Beijing or are not having my job. And they're having like those explanations about their roles. And you're like, wow, this person is wonderful. So yeah, self-confidence, it's a journey. I'm personally not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think yeah, like you say, you have to kind of, that these things are really hard because I mean, putting yourself out there, like for maybe your colleague to go sit, you know, at the table in the, you know, in the important seat area, like that can be scary if you don't have a lot of self-esteem. And I think if you are, I've had experiences, you know, previously over my career where my role wasn't this, but I would sometimes find that I was being treated like a secretary. Like people would like, you know, text me at random times and assign me random admin duties. And it was just like, I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't give this task to a male colleague. And I'm also pretty sure maybe you wouldn't adopt this type of tone with a man. But because, you know, I'm a girl, I'm a woman. If I'm supposed to be nice, you know, sweet and, you know, helpful. So it can be scary if you try to push past this, and growing confidence is really hard. In my experience, I think the only way to become confident, because I think after I turned 30, I was like, you know, I need to tackle this issue because I found myself just repeating kind of career, finding myself in the same circle again. For me, it was, I have to just like face fears and get over things. And, you know, part of that was saying like, if I did something well, I shouldn't be ashamed to say it. I shouldn't feel like, you know, it's bragging. If you put it on your LinkedIn and you know, you've won an award, it's not, because that's what LinkedIn is. It's a place where people go to find your references. Ella, I'd love to hear your opinion you strike me as quite like a strong, confident person. Maybe it's just I'm seeing the swimmer in you, but I'd love to hear if you have any tips about, you know, growing confidence, maybe when it comes to women putting themselves down and so on, if you have any advice on this.
Yeah, I really actually first want to comment on something that you said, which I think is very important, where you said, you know, I'm a nice, respectful person. And I think for me, part of it, especially demanding kind of respect and gaining confidence in the workplace, was about realizing I can be a nice, kind person, and I can also demand respect. And I can also demand that I'm not going to be talked over. And I can also kind of have my space to share what I had prepared to say, or to be part of the meeting, sit at the table, so to speak. So I think that was something for me in the workplace in terms of gaining confidence that was really important, is that being confident and demanding some degree of respect doesn't mean I'm a bad person. And that's something I think that I definitely had to grow into, still growing into, still struggle with. But I think from athletics, the biggest thing learned about confidence is that at the end of the day, athletics is about just pushing the human limit. Like, what can my body do? And learning to respect where that is every day, and knowing that one day, one practice might go terribly or one meet might go really well. And not putting my entire value on a particular performance or how my body is performing one day. And that was something that able to kind of to take into the workplace and say, if a day doesn't go well, or if a meeting doesn't go as well as I expected, it doesn't mean that my confidence starts from zero again. It's slowly this process of kind of building up and coming into my own. And I don't think that process ever ends. And there's something that's really encouraging about that every day is a new day where we can kind of learn more about ourselves and be more comfortable with ourselves. And so I've definitely gone through periods where I've been very uncomfortable with myself, or where I've struggled a lot with confidence, but I feel like it's all kind of gradually on this kind of stepping stone, this progression. And part of it is really just demanding to have a seat at the table and then just doing as much as you can once you get there.
Okay. I loved all of that, Ella. That was all brilliant. So I guess like we're kind of nearing towards my next question, and that's about the other side of, having your career in China. Sometimes we just talk about, oh, I have my career, but the reality is very different. In reality, you can feel a lot of pressure. You can feel like there are all these expectations on you. You can hop onto social media, as Helena said. You have some people who maybe they did this, but they stretch it out and they pretend like they, saved the world or whatever, won some Nobel Prize, but they, maybe won a pop quiz at school. And so, we're all on we often find ourselves comparing ourselves to other people and so on. And, I guess my point of this is how can you cope when you feel like your career is a bit of a disaster, or you feel like a loser? And Helena actually runs a series of events with her community there, and it's called Drinks with Losers. So it's just celebrating that, hey, I don't have it figured out, you don't have it figured out, let's just support each other through it, and stop glossing over everything and pretending everything is perfect. Can you share your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, next event next week, exactly, March 2nd. And it's fascinating because now we sold out, and it sells out in 2 days. People have this urge of being able to relate to each other. And it's possible to relate to each other when you go through the behind the scenes, when it's don't tell me what you do at work. Tell me what is it that you like about your job? What is it that really drives you? What are you passionate about at your work? What is an area where you're being challenged at work or in your career? Or what has been your career journey? Are you satisfied with it? And I think all of those questions, first, they make you realize that you're not the only one struggling. I think they also help you finding mentors. Mentors is basically someone that you kind of look up to, who maybe has a little bit more experience than you do, and that is able to reassure you that everything's going to be all right, because it's true. Really, everything is going to be all right. It's scary because when we are comparing each other, we're comparing something that we know, which is our reality, with the image that is projected by other people, which is, oh, they have success and they have it all figured out. But when you can rely on more meaningful and authentic conversations, or when you can rely on the experience of mentors, they remind you that it would be much healthier to compare your reality with their reality, and also leverage the experience of others to notice what is it that is in your power to do things that are possible. And then things that seem so scary or impossible become possible.
Okay, amazing, Helena. So we have just about 4 minutes left before we go to the Q&A. And I think Yasmin may have already had to log off because she's got another appointment, or she's about to log off. So maybe just before you go, Yasmin, I'm going to just go through all the panelists. And I just want to know, what is your top piece of advice for anyone who's about to start their China career journey adventure?
I can go first since I have to leave in a minute, but I just want to say that I can just agree with everything that Helena just said. Just surround yourself by people you would.
Okay. It may have paused for you guys. Has it paused?
Yes.
Okay, so how about yes, she's had to go. How about we start with you, Helena? It seems like Yasmin was agreeing with you. Anyway, so that's good to know.
Boom. So back to me. I think it's a very tricky question because it really depends of the reason why you're coming to China, in my opinion. But I would say it is likely that if you're moving to another country, such as China, you are using this moment to kind of start from scratch and reinventing yourself. And I think it's important to have that in mind, that now you get to choose to think, what kind of person do you want to be? And then asking yourself, what is it that I can do in order to be that person that I want to be? So like Yasmin, before it cut off, we heard her surrounding herself by being careful about the people she wants to surround herself with. Because it's true, like those people are going to be the ones lifting you up. They're also going to be the ones being your source of inspiration. And then it's going to remind you, okay, do I want to be similar to that person that I'm seeing, or do I want to be closer to that person? And constantly reminding you of that. That would be maybe so.
Okay, yeah, the people you surround yourself with have huge influence on you, lifestyle habits, even spending habits, dietary habits, and so on. So that is a really, really good piece of advice. Yasmin, you're back. Would you like to finish off your point? Oh, I think we can't hear you very well. So I guess I'll jump to Ella.
Sure. I think my biggest piece would be to be open. I think it's just important to have an open mind going to, whether it's a new country or even a new city, maybe if it's a new town, just to be open. And I think also with that, what I've found in my career is the minute that I feel myself not as open is also a sign that it's time to move on. And so that's been a good indicator, kind of a gut feeling of when it's time to kind of shift gears, is that I feel myself not as open and ready for the adventure as I was initially. And I think that's something I've kind of used as one of my barometers for, hey, maybe it's time to try something new.
Okay, excellent. And I think for me, I would just say, I think just in general, I think you would enjoy your experience much more if you just learn the language. Because maybe even in your career, you won't be using Chinese every single day, but you will be, happier with your life in general. Things will just run smoother. So maybe I had to say that since we're hosted by the Business Confucius Institute. But yeah, I think that is the way to do it. If I could do it all again from the start, I would have maybe tried to get a language scholarship, which I think that would be a brilliant way to kick off the China adventure. All right. Well, with that, I'll hand back to Emily.
Thank you very much to our panelists for that really insightful discussion. Many of your points really resonated with me. And thank you so much for your candidness, especially relating to networking and female empowerment. Funnily enough, actually, Nandini, your point about people kind of treating you sometimes like a secretary or assigning you that role, it is something that my mum has said to me when she's been on a board of her equals, being asked and refusing to take notes or make tea and coffee. So I really hope, and I'm feeling really fired up from this discussion, that our generation can be the one to change.
Accomplished.
So yes, I hope we keep seeing gains as you said that we're seeing already. So thank you very much. We have a very active audience who have some questions for you. So I'll try and group them together as we go, kind of starting with networking. You've all discussed using LinkedIn to kind of speak to your successes and advocate for yourself. Someone has mentioned how important LinkedIn is. I know in China it's recently kind of been sidelined as a networking app. So if you could speak on that.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in and then I'll hand over to the other ladies. In my point of view, I think it's still really important. The format, it may have changed now. It's just basically that you can see someone's profile, but you don't have the whole page where people can share posts and so on. Still, I think that having your profile out there, having, adding extra attachments like photos of you doing events or, articles or attaching a reference, I think all of that is really important, because when most people probably would receive a CV, they will probably Google you, and one of the first things that will come up is LinkedIn, and it might even look strange if you don't have one. Helena, what are your thoughts on this?
Fully agree. Crucial, essential. Don't be like me. Update your LinkedIn on a regular basis. I would add to that. Also, share the content that you find interesting, because it reminds your contacts what you're up to. So it's not only about sharing about yourself, but it's also about sharing things that matter. And I would say reach out to people with a small note first, right? Like we said for WeChat. Hey, I saw that this is what you were doing. I'd like to be connected for that particular reason. Like, this is what these platforms are for. Leverage them. It's useful.
Yeah. So to show how useful it is, I actually was contacted on LinkedIn about this event. So that kind of just demonstrates like what opportunities you can get. Ella, what about yourself? What are your thoughts? LinkedIn or linked out?
I agree. I love it. I'd say I think that it's great because sometimes if you lose contact with previous colleagues or from different, as you go throughout your career, I find that I've found a lot of people that I maybe had lost touch with, or who'd been doing things where maybe were colleagues before and doing something different now. And I feel like it's a great way to kind of keep in touch and kind of continue building a global network. I think that's what's really important about LinkedIn. I haven't found it as useful, obviously, in China for reasons that most people know. And in that case, I think, WeChat has kind of, in a way, taken place of it. But I think that it's still important to have it, because even if we're in China, I mean, we're living global lives, and LinkedIn provides at least a good way to connect with people all over the world. So I think a combination of probably LinkedIn and WeChat have been essential to me navigating most of my career.
Cool.
Yeah, Derek has said, yeah, thank you very much. And Jane has also shared in the Q&A that she also appreciates people being direct when you reach out. So in your little note, when you send with your kind of requests, to just get directly to the point. And then our next question kind of relates back to the idea of female empowerment. When you are in a situation where you are feeling like your views are not being listened to, how would you lean in and make your voice heard without being offensive or rude?
Okay. Who would like to take that first? It's a juicy question.
Yeah, I can take that. Without being rude. I think that two things. First is that looking at on the surface, are we actually being rude, or are we just asking for respect? I think that's one important kind of distinguishing factor. And then I think the other thing is kind of the way I look at it, and something I've been working on recently, is that when I feel I'm not being heard, just telling the other person, I would really like to finish my point. I prepared and I have this that I want. Can you please let me finish? And I found most people are completely taken aback, but very respectful, because like I said before, usually it's not conscious. It's not, oh, I can't stand to listen to this person talk, or, oh, this person has nothing valuable to say. It's, A, I'm really excited about whatever it is I have to say, or B, I just maybe wasn't fully realizing. And I think people, at least colleagues, people that I work with or people that I'm connected with outside of work, they're actually pretty receptive to the fact that you just say, hey, by the way, and maybe not publicly, depending on what the cultural preference is where you are. It might be after the meeting, kind of take the person aside and say, hey, I really wanted to finish that point, and sometimes I feel that I'm not able to completely say what I came to say. And other times, I think it's completely okay to be in a meeting and say, I'm not finished. And just remember that it's not from a malicious place, and asking for respect is not a crime or something to be ashamed of. It's more a way to kind of feel part of the conversation, feel part of what you're doing. And it shows that you care.
I'd like to build up on what Ella said. I'm not finished, and hey, I prepared and I really would like to finish. Think about how you're feeling as you're saying that. When you're feeling really confident that what you have to say is bringing something to the table, and you're saying, I'm not finished, you're also doing it for others because you're bringing value. So people will be grateful to let you finish. But when in your mind, you're like, okay, maybe what I have to say is actually not so good. And now I feel that speaking or people are speaking on top of me, then it's really hard to say that. And then we're really afraid of coming out rude. So I think something that can be helpful is asking yourself from which place you're coming from. Are you coming from because of lack of confidence, like you want to be heard because you feel that otherwise you're not being respected? Or do you want to be heard because you think that you have a good point that is contributing to the conversation? And to that, what can be helpful is just saying it. It's like, hey, it's not only that I want to be finished, but hey, I also have this point that I think you might want to hear about. And if you're convinced that this is bringing value, it's not going to be rude. You're actually being very helpful. So to the point of what Ella started with, are we being rude when we're actually having something to say?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't find that rude at all, but I think we put so much pressure on ourselves that we want to come across as a certain way, and we're always overthinking what people are. I mean, not we general, but a lot of us are always overthinking what's going on, how are we being perceived. I would notice that when I was doing my bachelor's and also doing my master's, that when there would be public speaking opportunities, often the female students, they would not want to put up their hands. And I think they were really like just nervous doing public speaking, and they seemed shyer. So I really want to say that I don't really like public speaking, but I think it's important that when you get the opportunity to do it, you should take it, because it's about, doing something that scares you. The more you do it, the more comfortable you will get with it. And also, I want to see more women, on the platform, because I think they have something to say. So it's not just you doing it for yourself, you're also doing it for other people. And, this is really important for other, for diversity, for all sorts of different communities to also, when they're in the spotlight, really take your moment. You deserve to be heard. Yeah. So back to Emily.
Yeah, perfect. I think those points really speak back to your kind of practical tips about developing your confidence, finding mentors, surrounding yourself with people that will inspire you and lift you up, because you deserve to be heard and you deserve to be represented. Kind of on this vein, what's the biggest difficulties that you've met and how you've overcome those since you've started to live and work in China?
For me personally, I'd say I put a lot of difficulties on myself. I was maybe very self-limiting, and I was self-sabotaging. Like in my career, I set a bar really low for myself. I was scared to, ask for more, like, for example, promotion bring up problems with bosses, because I didn't want to be, that annoying, needy person. I was scared to reach out to, old colleagues, people. Like, it wouldn't have been offensive or weird for me to reach out to them and ask them for a coffee and ask them for advice. So as I said, when I turned 30, I was like, okay, 30, like, for me, that means a real adult. This is not how a real adult should be. I shouldn't be scared of these things, and I need to fix my issues. So that was kind of the age when I joined BWN, and I got involved in their workshops and so on, and then started volunteering for them. So I'd say, unfortunately, it can be unfortunate that you yourself have to put in a lot of work, but I think there are tools out there, YouTube videos or mentoring programs, so on, where if you do have these self-limiting thoughts and you think that you're self-sabotaging and setting a low bar for yourself, these are actually skills that you can learn. So don't tell yourself, I'm a quiet person, I'm a doormat. It's not going to always be like that. You can learn skills and you can get out of that. Yeah. So next, Helena.
For me, the biggest challenge is, and it completely pivoted everything, is I was really, really struggling in 2016 because I was not having the life that I wanted to have for myself. I don't know if it's really related to China. I think it's something that, can take place anywhere where you are, whether you move to China or not. But it's when you think that this is the life that you want, and actually it isn't. And I think being aware of the signals and regularly asking yourself, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of lifestyle do I want to have? Do I actually want to settle and be with that partner and be at this well-paid job? Or do I want to have something more risky that maybe my family is not supportive of, but maybe it's going to actually really make you feel more aligned with the person that you are? Because here's the thing. If you actually choose to live for others and have the lifestyle that maybe your parents are encouraging, or that this partner that is so wonderful on paper is telling you to have, it's actually not sustainable. At some point, either you're going to break out or you're just going to realize that you're miserable. And you don't want to realize that once it's too late. So it's good to check in regularly, so as to not completely crash.
Yeah, that's really important. I think it just sounds like we just try to fix our problems and become real adults. Ella, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I completely resonate with what both Nandini and Helena have said. I think the only thing I would add is that when I came to China, I was afraid to ask for help. And moving to a country halfway across the world and not being willing to ask for help, I tried to do a lot on my own that I probably didn't need to. And what I actually found is that when I kind of was able to realize that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, and it can actually make things a lot easier, I actually made better connections. And I met people that I never would have met had I not asked for any help. I give one really quick example. I was planning some sort of reception for a company, and I need a jazz band. And I wrote in a WeChat group, hey, does anyone know any good jazz band recommendations here in Beijing? And someone texted me back. And to this day, that person is one of my best friends in Beijing. And we met basically a month after I'd been there, and we're still so connected. And if I hadn't asked for help and had gone and just kind of searched online, Baidu, for the jazz band, I would have never met her. So I think asking for help is something that also really can open up the world a lot more than we tend to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I wish we could have you for a little longer. It sounds like you've got so much experience between you all. So I would just say to anyone who's still got questions they'd like to ask for the panel, please just send them over to our email, which I'll post down in the chat, and we can follow up with the panel. For now, I thank you again.
Sorry, Emily, one thing.
Yes.
Sorry, one thing. I saw that Jane Kim posted in the chat, and I think this is a really important question. I don't want to beleaguer the panel, but she said about the networking that in Asian, she said that she thinks that in Asian culture, when we have something to ask, but sorry to ask for, are sorry about asking for a favor, that maybe we do some small talk before. And I think this is a really important question, because the cultural difference that you will encounter when you go somewhere new, also we need to be open to that. And I think she brought up something really, really important. I just want to share one thing very, very quickly, which is that I had a colleague, local colleague, who would always come over and compliment my earrings, but I knew she actually really just needed me to do something for work. And I think that part of being in a new place is that we also learn to adjust. And so I know that, normally I would love someone to be very direct with me if they want something, especially networking. But I also knew that that was her way of being respectful. And I think giving people the space to do what's respectful in their culture and making sure that you kind of meet halfway is something that's really important about the journey in China, for sure.
No, thank you for highlighting that. I think that's really important. Kind of relates to questions of culture shock as well, and periods of adjustment. And I suppose throwing yourself into zone 5 of Beijing is one good way to meet other people and get to know the local culture. So thank you for that insight. Would any of the panelists like to share anything else on that note? I'm sure there's some people hanging back who are very interested to hear what you have to say. So I'm sure we could continue if you wish.
So interesting for me, Ella, what you just said, because I'm the opposite. So finally, we have something to disagree on. I love your flexibility. My partner at home, who's Chinese American, would love me to do exactly what you recommended. And I'm terrible at that. I've had some people reaching out and saying, "Hi, Helena, how are you?" And I'm like, I don't want to answer that question. I'm busy. Like, go straight to the point. But I think maybe there's like some sort of compromise between you and me, and maybe with Jane, is that just having this random, "Hey, Helena, how are you?" It's not actually checking in how I am. It's like not, "Hey, Helena, I've seen that you've been doing this and that. How are you going with your project?" It's not the genuine care. And I think that goes to the point of Jane, is that they actually want to go straight for a request, but then not going for it. And I don't really like that awkward moment. So either you're building up on the relationship, which is, "Hey, you have nice earrings," and then being open to that. It's like, "Hey, maybe this person is not," because that I'm blind to that. I would not be able to do what you've done, which is, maybe this person actually wants something from you for work, but actually simply being open to, this person wants to build a relationship with me. And I don't know what for. Maybe it's because they have a request. Maybe it's because they want to know where I bought my earrings. Maybe it's just because, they want to make friends, and just being open to that and creating what I call like safe spaces, so that that person feels comfortable enough that then they can make a request should they have any. And to the point of Jane, it's like, if you want to make a request, or if someone wants to make a request, either go straight to the point, because I'm okay with that. And then, maybe you're going to be rejected, but at least we're going to have a very direct conversation, or pretend that you actually care about what's going on in my life, because then I'll be more happy, to have this relationship built up, and then we can go straight to your point.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I guess maybe it just goes to show that when you are like a foreigner living abroad, there's still so many things you need to learn, and there's so many different ways to interpret some situations. And like, as we're showing, like, we're still learning now. So I think that also kind of sums up the China experience. You never stop learning. There's still so much to discover, to keep going on. Whether it has to do with just things in your job, or learning about different relationships and so on, how to handle interpersonal relationships. So yeah, I wish that sounded deep. I don't know if it does.
Thank you. It's so great to hear from a panel of mavericks. I'm feeling really inspired, and I'm pleased to be able to speak for our audience when I say thank you very much. Yeah, your discussion was really helpful, and your expertise is very motivating. I will have to draw to a close now, but please, if you do have questions, I'll post the email in the link below, and I'll definitely be following up with the panel. So you can be prepared to see the event recording on our Facebook if that's agreeable with you. And potentially some clips shared on our social media. There's so much to review, and yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
Lots of thank yous coming in from our audience. Thank you very much all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much again. Have a nice rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take care.
thank you.
Good luck with your studies.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Yeah, see you maybe in Beijing.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks very much. Take care.